Hello, welcome. You're watching Loops and Lore with Meg, and this is going to be my December wrap-up, in which I've had some high highs and some low lows. So in December, I officially completed 3 books, and that is it. I am so sad that I only finished 3, but I did have 2 DNFs, one of which took up so much of my time that I'm quite sad that I devoted that much time to it. I could have read a whole nother book instead of reading what I did and not finishing it. So of the month, I read 1,897 pages, and I do believe that includes all of the pages that I read on my DNFs. I'm getting all my stats from Storygraph, and I do believe they include those into your reading wrap-up graphics. And my average rating was a 3.83. which overall is not too shabby. My average length of book was 450 pages, so I was reading some chunky things this month. And it took me on average about 6 days to finish, but that's because I read some super quick and some not so quick. So my average out was pretty much in the middle. I did find it interesting that compared to November, I read 25% less books, which means I will have 1 less book because I read 4 in November and 3 this month. But I read 25% more pages. So even with less book, I was reading more pages. So, you know, that's just how it rolls when you're reading such different varieties of books. Sometimes you read less, but you read actually more. And that's definitely how I felt about this month. Was I read a ton, even though it doesn't show like I did. So the first book I'm going to talk about is A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. This is a nonfiction memoir type of thing. I say memoir loosely because this is about David Attenborough and him kind of reflecting on his life and his connection to exploring our world and the different travesties that he has seen along the way, the different extinctions that he's seen, the loss of biodiversity that he has seen throughout his life, and what that means for our future. And it really is like a witness statement of what has happened and what he sees happening and how we can fix it if we start now. And so this book definitely was hard to read because it was so dark in a sense that our future does not look very bright unless we change it. I did end up giving this a 4.5 stars. I really liked it. There's just something about it that wasn't a 5-star read. Couldn't tell you exactly what that is. I was just going with my gut on this rating, but I had a good time listening to him talk about it, and there were certain sections of the book that was really drawing me in. But unfortunately, when I got to that 3rd section about the things that we can do to change it, it felt like it was almost written in a different voice, and it didn't have the same, I don't know, the same feel to it. I don't know how to explain that. So it definitely was a little bit of a letdown when it got to that part, but also that part was probably the most important part of the book. So it's still something that should be read and needs to be read, but it definitely felt disconnected from the others, at least for me personally. So that is how I couldn't quite give it a 5-star, but it was so good. And I think it's one that definitely everyone should read. It is a 272-page nonfiction, and like I said, I gave it 4.5, so really enjoyed it. Book number 2 is The Veiled Kingdom by Holly Renne. This is a romantasy book that is 339 pages. And is about this girl who is the princess, because her dad is like this cruel king leader type thing that everyone hates but also fears. And it's such a, like, it's so hard to talk about because it just is kind of cliche. But she is one of the only ones that doesn't have magic, and I actually kept on forgetting that this is a fae world, where I think everyone is fae, but they were written so like normal that it was kind of jarring when something fae was mentioned. But she gets captured by rebels, and basically they don't know who she is, so she is given the choice to basically join us or die type scenario. So she's like, sure, I'm gonna join the rebels. I don't like my dad anyways. I'm just trying to escape this world and get away from everybody. So of course, you know, the rebel leader is someone that she's like, ooh, he's attractive. And they have this whole banter of each of them keeping secrets and everything. And I don't know, I gave it 2 stars. I did not like it at all. Honestly, talking about it, I probably could have given it lower than 2 stars, but I was being generous with my rating. It's an easy read. I think I read it in 2 days, and for 300 pages, you know, that's pretty quick for me. But I had the ebook and the audiobook, and I just cranked that thing up and was flying through the ebook. But everything about this book, and we talked about this at book club because this was our December book club book. Everything about this book felt like it could have been the first 4 chapters or 5 chapters to a pretty solid novel if it had just been condensed down and actually given a plot. Because this whole thing was basically her in training in this rebel thing and hoping that nobody found out who she was. And it just, everything about it felt like the startup of a novel. But everything about this just, it wasn't written super well. It wasn't given any sort of plot. The characters felt very flat and just, they are what they are type thing. And yeah, I did not like it at all. And like I said, 2 stars is pretty generous rating. And the only reason I gave it that is because it was easy to read. So I did talk with one of the girls who did go ahead and read book 2 because she is the type of person that doesn't like to quit. And she basically confirmed that book 2 and book 1 could have been smashed together and probably made a better book if they would have. And there's apparently going to be a book 3, so I will not be continuing the series at all. It is not staying on my radar at all, and I am happy to move on from it. And yeah, that's how that went. Next, the book number 3, the final book that I finished this month, is Empire of the Vampire. I ended up loving this, and I thought that I would just because I really like Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, and this gives me Nevernight feels without it being Nevernight. And this is a 739 page chunker of a book that is a dark fantasy, like almost gothic fantasy about vampires. So within this, the sun suddenly does not rise to the same like intensity that it has before. And so for 27 years, it has been dimmed and dark, and therefore the vampires have taken over, and it is now the Empire of the Vampire. And it's all about humanity's struggle to survive and kind of overthrow and change what has happened. And you follow Gabriel de Leon. And the story follows Gabriel de Leon. I cannot do that. I am so horrible with any other accent other than my own. And so much of this has French influence. So it's de Leon is his last name, and I can never do that. So anyways, it follows Gabriel, who is the last of the Silver Saints, who are a half vampire, half mortal beings who have special powers because of their ancestry with the vampires. So basically, if a vampire impregnates a woman and it's a male offspring, they have the characteristics of their father and that kind of thing. So there is a holy order sworn to fight vampires of these half vampire men who are like knighted by God to fight this battle. This has a lot of religious tones to it, but obviously in the fantasy sense that it is not our religion, but the religion, but it is kind of parallels, could be said between it. And Gabriel has been captured by the vampires, and you know this from the very beginning, and he is basically telling his story to his captors. And that premise of it makes this so cool. I really enjoyed how he was a little bit of a not reliable narrator because he's telling his story the way he wants to tell it. And there's certain things that he does not want to be known until certain points in the story. And so that makes it pretty cool because you go back, you know, to his childhood, but then also when he first gets to be a part of the Silver Saints and his training and different missions that he's been on and different battles he was in and all of that. And it kind of all ties up into this one story. And I gave this 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, I ended up finishing this in about 7 to 8 days, which is pretty good for how thick this is. And it's definitely one that's going to stick with me, and I can't wait to get to the sequel of this because there's definitely some hooks left hanging that I want to know what happens. So this was definitely a highlight of the month. Now, unfortunately, I did have 2 DNFs this month. So that is where this this month really took a nosedive along with The Veiled Kingdom. But the first one that I DNF'd, I kind of knew going in that I might end up DNFing this book just because of the content and the way that I had heard people talk about it. I knew it probably wasn't going to jive with me. And that was Borne by Jeff VanderMeer. This is a 336-page book that came out in 2017 that is a science fiction, like surrealist science fiction novel. And it follows Rachel, who is a scavenger who is trying to survive in this ruined city that is controlled by these like massive bio, like, you know, experiments, basically. And it's basically about them, like her and her partner, trying to learn how to survive in this world. And it was just a little too surrealist and awkward and weird. And I couldn't wrap my head around the things that they were talking about. And so it's just between that and the writing style and everything, it just was not for me. I do think it is a great written book. I could see why so many people love it, but it's just not for me. So I did go ahead and unhaul this, and I actually gave it as a part of my Christmas book exchange. So it has been found a new home already, and so that's exciting. And it is another one off of my TBR, which is great. You know, I can't say anything bad about this book. It wasn't for me, and that's the end of it, basically. I also couldn't tell you much what it was about because even though I read 89 pages of it, didn't understand a thing. So the final book that I think I am pretty much ready to call an official DNF, even though I still have it on pause on Storygraph, just because I want to see if I ever think about it to go back to it, is To Sleep in the Sea of Stars. This is a science fiction novel by Christopher Paolini, and I adore Aragon. It was one of my favorite series growing up. So I was so excited to finally get to this. And this is 878 pages, and I think I read like over 450 of them. I was over halfway done. And man, I just could not figure out how to get into this. Like, there's nothing like super bad about it. It follows a scientist who discovers like alien artifacts, and she is suddenly kind of taken over by this parasitic, sentient-ish type of alien relic. And it sparks a war between her race of humans and these alien species. And you kind of found out that part of what she did, like, maybe created some of these sentient like things to take over. They're like parasitic and taking over different forms and that kind of thing. It's so strange. And I don't know, I never got connected to any of the characters. I never got connected to the storyline. I put it down hoping that I'd be like, ooh, but what happened? And I haven't had that feeling yet, so I'm pretty sure this is going to be a DNF. But it feels like a collection of all of the things sci-fi put into one novel. And I feel like I've read things like it and I've watched movies like it. And there's something about it that never drew me in all the way. So like I said, I'm kind of having it on pause because maybe at some point I'll come back to it and finish the last half. But as of now, this is most likely going to be an unhaul, as well as the second book, because I do own both of them, which makes me sad because I really, really like the look of these. And this one's so short. So I don't really understand like the pacing between these two, because it's like, is this everything and this is like a side novel? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew the reason why I couldn't get connected to this, because then I'd be like, this is the reason, you know, I could put it down and I could be happy. But it's so weird that I don't connect to this, because on paper it's everything that I love. But it's just not connecting with me, which sucks. So anywho, that is my wrap up for the month. It definitely did not go the way I expected, so that is something. But I did get some of the books off my TBR. This was technically a 25 and 2025 book, so it is technically off of that list now. So I have 24 more books to go in that. But yeah, it just is a little bit of a weird reading month. So if you read any of these, let me know down below what you think. And what was your favorite book of the month? I definitely like to know that, so that way I can know whether or not to read it. So comment down below, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy reading, stay cozy, stay crafty. Bye.